So, in a world where everyone's trying to prioritize, I just want to be really clear having 8 priorities is not prioritizing. It's why everybody is overproductive and completely burnt out. So, today we unpack the idea of the work that no one needed and why the hell are we doing it? Welcome to Brave Proximity, the space where leaders and changemakers finally exhale, tell the truth, and get the validation they rarely receive. This is not a how to podcast. This is not motivational wallpaper or corporate comfort language. Here, the messy, is it just me? Moments become turning points. I'm Marissa Green.
I'm Susan Page, and we are futurists and practitioners who have spent decades inside turbulence, helping leaders who care deeply navigate culture, crisis, egos, expectations, and everything in between. We've seen the gap between what leaders and changemakers feel and what they're allowed to say. Brave Proximity is a place to close that gap. Each episode starts with the elephant in the room, often disguised as a pet peeve, and we follow it to the deeper truth underneath. We do not just talk about leadership. We get close to what leadership actually feels like.
If no one would notice that the work disappeared, why are you doing it? Why are we doing it? Susan, how many useless boxes did you check this week?
I mean, my checklist was so long that I spent too much time checking the boxes of the stuff that I wasn't supposed to do.
Of the stuff that didn't matter.
Of the stuff that didn't matter.
Right.
This is a topic to me that I feel like we could talk hours about, but I do think in some of the prep that we've talked about it, we have some really good ways to talk about it. But I want to say this is I think it's important we bring out the elephant.
Let's get the elephant out there. Put it on the table.
And I might start by saying, every time I ask somebody how they're doing, they're like, I'm busy.
Oh my gosh.
I'm busy. So the elephant in the room is that people are drowning in work that adds no value. And it's simply to say that they're productive and there's no strategy behind it.
Yeah. And there's no avenue for them to actually talk about the work that needs to stop.
Yes, because if we talked about that, it might be negative. And heaven forbid that somebody would, pressure test a strategy.
Yes. Because I think what's happening is it's a societal issue, but I think especially in corporate America, we've gotten sort of obsessive about the idea of productivity and busyness. And we only think we are of value if we are busy or if we have something to work on,
which only you can see people being busy.
Right? That's why we want people to be in their seats inside, offices, right?
And seats.
We'll have a whole other episode on that. But it is really pervasive, and I call it corporate conditioning.
Yes.
It's also societal conditioning. I don't call it that. That's what it's called by other people that are smarter than me, but I like to name it because it is something that we're all falling victim to, really.
Yeah.
We've been taught over the years. I mean, I grew up in agency. Agency life was like the queen of this because you got paid by the hour.
Billable
hours. Fill your hours. It didn't honestly matter at the end of the day if what you filled your time with made any difference. It was just you filled your time. And so we learned that behavior. That's, one circumstance. But the same thing is happening generally in corporations where people are walking halls, they're sitting at their laptops, and they're just trying to produce as much as possible and very rarely asking the tough questions to say, is what we are doing actually mattering?
Yeah.
And I actually run into this quite a bit with my consulting clients.
Yes.
And it's the spaces that I feel the most empowered to be able to be, hello, red flag, white flag, whichever color flag you want to put up. My favorite exercise to do is a stop, start, continue, because if you can actually make space for what doesn't matter anymore or what can be stopped, then all of a sudden your team's not burnt out anymore. And the value that you add to the organization grows exponentially.
Yes.
People are no longer questioning if what you do matters. And I think this is most obviously in our world in human resources.
I
think there is a lot of work to be done in HR about what matters and what doesn't and what you can just get rid of.
Okay, 2 things I want to say. Yes, about the HR piece. And I think that it is, I don't want to say being exposed, but there are really great HR leaders who have been doing this well for years.
Yes.
Again, not a ton of them. But then the second thing is I sometimes laugh because on the start, stop, continue, I'm like, why don't people do this all the time? And I think,
Yeah.
what are you afraid of? There is always going to be more work. Like,
Yes.
it's not like, well, I'm going to go home now. There's
Yeah.
nothing left.
It's never going to be that.
It's never going to be
You're
that.
not going to work yourself out of a job.
Yes.
Right?
Correct. Well, I mean, and then if you do,
We need a glass of wine for that one.
yeah, if you do, you're going to, like, you got to be scrappy and think about what's next. But most likely, no.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this about strategy is what I've learned, and again, back to HR, is we don't think about our customer as much as we should.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, we build strategies in a room where we feel like this is what the business needs.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what I would love to do is go out and say, business, and this is how it should be done. And some people do it very well. What are your hardest challenges?
Yeah.
And then I'm an expert in HR.
Yes.
So I will figure out how to design people solutions to help you drive your business.
Yep.
And I'm not sure, and this is the part where we're unpacking things, but I'm not sure how many times have we heard this? To be good, you have to really know the business. You have to have the best business acumen.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to be really good at asking questions.
Yes.
And I think that's why
Yes.
marketers are really good. And marketers, like you said, we've talked about this, have really good strategy sessions.
Really good strategy.
Every time I've left a marketing session, I'm like, holy crap, here's our 3 pillars. Here's our 3 tactics. We
Yes.
execute on it and we
Yes.
win.
And you're only going to invest in the areas that are going to move the needle the most.
Absolutely.
Like that ruthless prioritization.
Yes.
Marketers know how to do it the best because they don't have infinite dollars of spend. So they learn it the best. That's where I learned strategy.
Yeah.
And in all of my PR days and working in communications, it was always a marketer leading the planning. And there was a process to the planning. There was a budget to the planning.
Yep.
And you weren't given the budget before you did the planning.
Correct.
Like in
Correct.
organizations,
You are backed into
you
it.
are backed into budgets, and then all you're doing is like a moving numbers around
Yes.
exercise. You're not actually building a strategy or a plan. And so I think a lot can be learned from marketers. And I've thought about this a lot, and not just in terms of overproductivity and things that don't matter, but also just in the importance of strategy
Yeah.
inside organizations. And of all the companies that I have worked with, I have always been surprised at how many senior leaders in organizations just haven't been given exposure and experience to developing real strategy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that, a lot of the times the organization has crafted like a organizational strategy, but I'm talking about functional strategies that aren't built from the bottom up where you've told somebody, hey, you have $100,000 next year. What are you going to do with it? But really starting with the tough questions.
Yeah.
What do our customers
our
want
biggest
and need?
challenges?
What are the
Yeah.
biggest challenges? Where do we believe we can move the needle? And I also think this is part of the reason that some organizations are going to have a really hard time as we move into the future of work and change becomes exponentially faster in a part of
Yes.
our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Because the churn of this swirl of productivity is going to become more prominent and a complete drag to the organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the churn of work being done because somebody just thinks they should be instead of knows why they are.
Yeah.
That will slow an organization down so much that they will not be able to move at the speed of change.
Yeah.
And so even if you don't care about someone's bandwidth and like burnout, at least care about your organization's capacity to change with agility.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to the topic too of, like, I always then start thinking about leaders too in this. Like, leaders are complicit in this too.
100%.
So on your one-on-ones, what are you doing? What are you doing? Instead, like there's, again, it goes back to asking the really good question. What are you doing that's creating an impact? And not in a shitty, like facetious way.
No.
But what are you?
Let's get real.
Yes. And I remember we would do strategy and I would be like, where's that strategy slide? Because aren't I supposed to be leveling up to this? And I know.
Isn't there a pillar that I align with?
Something, like, where does this fit?
Yeah, and especially the new pet project from someone,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like somebody's like, oh, by the way, we developed our whole strategy, but someone somewhere in a meeting in a room, like locked in a corner.
The CEO went to a board meeting for another company and they're doing this. Can we do that?
Can you do it tomorrow?
What? Where's the budget? No, we're getting rid of onboarding.
Right.
Okay. Sweet. Great.
Take it
That was
over.
my biggest project for the year.
I know. I know.
But yeah, and I think also, how do we reroute people and use the time that we have? I always think about leaders in the equation. How are they supporting their teams?
Yeah.
How are they pushing back?
Yes.
And
Yes.
saying, no, my team, if my team does this, then this.
Yes.
But I do think we also need to address that strategy is moving. We used to say strategy shifted in quarters, and now it shifts in days.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you mentioned agility, and I think that that is so important. Productivity is going to look different, in so many different ways,
Mhm.
but it goes back to why we are here.
Yeah.
Is asking the hard questions, not being afraid to step in and say, you're not explaining this to me well enough to justify that I need to take my time off here. And then not looking like you're being, insubordinate.
Right. Right. Well, I think that in most cases, high up leaders, that's what they expect out of the people that are reporting into them.
Just the doers.
Yeah. Well,
And
no.
don't say anything.
Well, no, I think they actually do expect you to say something. I think most leaders, like I've had a lot of CEOs
Yeah.
say,
Yes.
if what I'm asking you to do
yes.
isn't actually the right thing to do, you need to tell me. Because most leaders, I do think, are really aware that they're like out of touch with kind of
Yeah.
the basics down
Yes.
below. And so I do think there's a lot of capacity to, quote, push back, but doing it in a strategic way.
Right.
Like, and this was a huge shift for me when I was a director, because I never thought I could push back. I really, like, it was again, conditioned belief
Yes.
that I'm supposed to just do everything. And I had a really good leader who was like, look, if you work within a strategy, you're no longer saying no. You're saying why this other thing
Yes.
is more important.
Yes.
And if you are willing to ruthlessly prioritize, like really prioritize, and that does not mean having a list of 8 things that are priorities. Like prioritization is 3 things.
Yes.
One thing
Thank
even.
you. That is the best thing that we've said all day long here.
And so if you're willing to ruthlessly prioritize in that way, you're no longer saying no, you're explaining why this other
Yeah.
thing is more important. And then the other thing that I want to say about this is I think that sometimes leaders get ahead of their own ambition
Mm-hmm.
in projects. And so there's strategy, right? Like what shows up in the pillars that you decide once you've really aligned to the business
Yes.
need or the need of your customers. And then there is a whole lot of wiggle room in how ambitious you are with what
Yeah.
happens in that pillar.
Yes.
And I have watched a lot of leaders in my consulting work and in my work inside companies where their like ambition for what they want to achieve as an individual starts to take over what is strategically right for the organization.
Yeah.
And that comes through in sometimes you're pushing something that the organization isn't ready for. So when we're
Correct.
talking about HR, if every part of human resources has 4 big ambitions and aspirations
Mhm.
for the year,
Yes.
and you don't think about whether the company and employees can actually absorb all of that,
yeah.
you're going to fail before you start it anyway.
Yes.
And then your work has become busy work.
Yes.
You're literally doing things that are never going to see the light of day because no one's going to read it on the intranet or whatever the thing is. So you got to check your ambition.
Yes, I love that you're saying that, because there is a level of the organization being ready for what you're pushing out. But also, like, again, if you think about HR, is we are not the only organization doing
Agree.
asking for, the employees, the leaders to do something. And I
Yep.
think that's where even looking at the higher level strategy of an organization and organizing the work around what is digestible,
Yeah.
what ability. But remember, we also used to be able to do stuff and then shelf it for later. That like you can shelf it for like 2 weeks and it's outdated. So again,
right?
we're we really have to think about how the work gets done. And I think it's smart too, because we might not need as many people to do certain work. It doesn't mean that we have to
Right.
eliminate jobs. We repurpose them in certain
Yes.
ways. Yes, we are going to change the amount of people that we need for things, but we need to be smarter, and we need to ask the right questions, and we need to be able to push back and say, I don't even know why the hell I'm doing this. And
What
if
is
you
this
can't
even
explain
for?
to me, leader, why I'm doing this,
Mhm.
that's on you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And then I think too, let's talk about like how it impacts the individual contributor or people on our
Yeah.
teams because they start to get diluted with too many things,
Mhm.
and then that lack of clarity of what's actually most important. And so then
Yes.
what happens is you have these meetings, right? You talk about if you even have pillars, you talk about the pillars,
Yeah.
talk about the ambition of the projects. Everybody walks out the door and then they go do the thing that feels right. Like they're not
It's a maybe
actually
that's comfortable for
right?
them.
The thing that's comfortable for that
Yeah.
because that's human
It's
nature,
human
right? I'm
nature,
gonna do
yeah.
the thing that I'm best at,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna do that one first before I go and do the hard thing. So here's the trickle down problem of having too many things, right? Is by the time it gets down to the team that's meant to execute it, they're only gonna be able to move part of it, and they're gonna choose which one feels
Mm.
best to them.
Yes.
So if you give someone too many options, they're not gonna do the thing you actually need them to do.
Right.
They're just
Right.
not. And so
Yeah.
then by the end of the day, you wonder why it takes a year to get a leadership program out the door. When in reality, you could get a leadership program out the door in 3 weeks.
Yes. Absolutely. 100%.
3 weeks.
100%. Also, I think there's an element of, when we push things out that aren't perfect too, because we
Yes.
spend a lot of
Yes.
time from a
Uh-huh.
productive standpoint
Uh-huh.
of making everything perfect. And I'm just going to say it like, I blame the leader that's holding people to that,
Yes.
standard.
Perfection of
Yeah,
expectation.
because
Fail
again,
fast.
yes.
Move on. Learn from it. Pilot something. Do it in a small part of the organization.
Right.
Don't do it for everybody.
Right.
We have to be able that nimble. I know people talk about agility all the time, but this is another area. Growth mindset and agility. I feel like as the new way of working comes in, if you are an organization who has not tackled those things yet, heaven help you. Good
We won't see you on
luck.
the NASDAQ.
Good luck. If you think you're not going to tumble, like I
Yes.
got another thing coming. We should take like a tally
I know.
of like it'd be so interesting to know like which organizations and the alignment to this idea of strategy in response to overproductivity. Like,
Right.
but
Right.
okay, so I also want to go back to like as an individual contributor when you're hit with, all of these things, sometimes it can feel like you don't have an option.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we're talking about pushing back in safe spaces and like
Yes.
finding ways, but sometimes it does just feel like I'm supposed to do all of this.
Yeah.
So, do you think that there's a way that people can take small elements that they're just like, I'm just going to let this sit, or they can have the tough conversation with their boss? Like, how do we bottom up this?
Well, you and I talked a little bit before we started the episode today is how leaders really support their teams in ruthless prioritization and having a conversation that doesn't feel like, let me look at your calendar and
Uh,
micromanage your time. Like, that's not
you have
what
a time
we,
management problem for the
Yes,
18 priorities
which
that we're trying to
time
achieve,
management itself, I'm like, what do I need a course on that now
Yeah.
too?
which is what we get trained on, which again,
yes.
waste of time.
I like that is a waste of my time to time manage, like to take a class. But I do think you are right. I think the question, and when we're thinking about like the reframe, is like, how do we make space? I think it has to be a healthy culture where you're able to question, to push back, to say, how does this align?
Mhm.
Yes, there's going to be one-offs where the CEO wants it, the CHRO wants it, or somebody, but those should be one-offs.
They should be one-offs, and there should be I feel like finding language sometimes helps. Like,
Tell me more.
so I feel like sometimes we're put in positions where we don't know what to say back when a boundary needs to be laid,
Yes.
right? So in absence of the language to create the boundary, we say yes,
Yeah.
right? And then you
Mhm.
walk away, and instead of it being a conversation about if
Yeah.
we should even be doing it, it's a conversation about how am I going to go get it done?
Right.
And so I don't know, like we're on the spot coming up with language, but I think it's language like, oh, that's a real business leader. That's a really great idea. I understand your need. Tell 3 questions about the need. Let me go back and see
Yes.
how we can address this with what we already are working on.
Yes.
Let me go back and find out what I can potentially shift around. And if I can't, how we're going to work this in 2027.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Like there's almost
a
just
yes
some like
and.
scripting.
Yeah.
In order to give people a language to talk about
Yeah.
something differently.
Because again, when we talked about this at the beginning, this is our customer
Yeah.
and you want to deliver to your
Of
customer.
course.
But you also, let's be real, is like I want to deliver to my customer, not the expense of me getting, a really shitty performance rating because I couldn't
I tried to
do
do too many
yeah, I tried to
things.
do too many things.
Well, and that's also where the marketer mindset comes in really well, right? A marketer would love to give customers everything
Everything.
possible,
Yes.
but they can't.
And they have a
And there
roadmap.
and they have a roadmap and there is a realistic it's like putting the elephant in the room, right? So if we're talking about HR for a minute and you have a business leader who's coming to HR for something, why isn't that a part of the acceptable response?
Yeah.
Right? Why isn't
Yes.
it okay to say, you know what? We only have so many resources and we only have so much bandwidth. And what we've decided for the entirety of the organization is that these are the 4 key priorities. If you need something additional, there's actually going to be a way for you to like go up to the CEO and ask for resources to do that.
Right.
Watch what happens.
Yeah.
If they have to go to the
Yes.
CEO to ask for resources, all of a sudden the project is not a priority anymore,
No.
unless it is.
Yeah.
Unless it
Yes.
actually is a priority.
Which would be a good outcome too.
Yes.
Both of those are good outcomes.
Yeah.
But then again, I go back to as practitioners in the talent, HR, employee experience space, we have done a really good job of demonstrating value. When I was selling pharmaceuticals, there were a lot of medical students who wanted to go straight into having their own practice, but they had never been trained as business people. And it's the same like with the
Yeah.
CHRO is you are no different. You own a P&L. Like, we need to reposition that in the best way possible to act like you have a P&L. And
Yes.
those are the hard questions that you ask.
Yes.
Those are and if that isn't, and I guess there's two things is if in an organization that isn't feasible and we're talking about productivity here, which is contributing to revenue. If that isn't feasible as a CHRO, then I might start looking somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's going to affect your entire team.
Yeah. And their capability.
and
I
their
would also say
capability.
too, I think we speak about HR because that's most of our experience.
Right.
But I've seen this in other parts of organizations as well. Again, I'm only talking about marketing being really good at strategy.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm not even sure that the strategy teams are good at strategy. They're really
They'll
great.
be in the quiet room with it's just you and them. They will tell you, I don't even think we have a strategy sometimes. Yes.
Because I think what happens is their viewpoint, their focus is on external environment, what's about to
Yes.
happen, competitor analysis. It's sort of like all the things happening around the business and how to address it versus how things get done inside the organization. They're 2 different strategic lenses.
Yes.
And I think very few departments inside companies really know how to develop strategy to support high value productivity within
Yes.
different departments. Like
Yeah.
it's not a skill that many organizations focus on. And it's different than what a strategy team does. Like a
Yes.
strategy probably org psychologists or org design specialists, they probably do it best, but usually their focus is on a workforce plan.
Yes.
Which is totally different than
Which
strategy.
is total and oftentimes doesn't get executed against.
Right.
Well, yeah, and now so we're talking about not like let's move into kind of reframing it. We talked a little bit about it, but you said something and then I was thinking, "Oh, I have a great reframe for it." But just in general, I think what we talked about too is don't leave a stone unturned.
Yes,
Keep asking
asking
questions until everybody is clear. I remember one of our friends that we both know dearly said, I could recite the best company strategy was one that everybody knew and I could recite it was so easy and
Yep.
it seems so simple. It seems so simple, but it was the intention behind it and the clarity that drove everybody
Yep.
forward with
Yep.
it.
And
And
then-
so I think that's, it ladders and it makes sense. Like make your strategy make sense
Make your strategy make sense and make it so clear that everyone knows how to plug into it
and be productive.
and be productive in a way that actually aligns to the value that you want them to bring
Yes.
to the organization or even better, the customer.
Yes.
Whoever your customer might be, internal or external. I feel like another reframe is that corporate conditioning of productivity for productivity's sake. I don't have a good answer. Again, we might not solve everything. I don't have a good answer for how to, the system is already what the system is. And so I do think it takes some people being willing to be I'm going to buck the system a little
Yes.
bit and not just be productive to be productive. I remember when we've both been in environments where at the beginning of this episode you said like you ask somebody how they are and they just say that they're
Y-
busy because you get like even that is bucking the system to
Yes,
not say you're
I
busy.
know. I
To
know.
say, "You know what? I ruthlessly prioritized today.
I know.
I did 3 things really
Really, really
well.
well.
I
Yes.
knocked this one thing out of the fucking park."
Yes.
Like,
Amen.
start finding ways to, 1, do that with your time, and then 2, talk about it. Like,
Yes.
see how that feels and see what permission that starts to give to other people
Yep.
to do the same. Because if we stop talking about how goddamn busy we are, maybe we would actually spend a moment to get the real thing that needs to be
Yeah.
done. And I mean, this also applies outside of work. I mean, let's
Absolutely.
be real. Like, I got a lot of busy work in my life too that
I
I
do
can
a
let
lot
go
of
of.
cleaning at
The
the
laundry's
house.
not getting done this weekend. But damn if I'm gonna wash the dishes so well.
I'm doing that hard.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think about this is maybe as a general reflection
Mhm.
is as an individual contributor, think about what your definition of productivity is.
Yeah.
Ask your leader. What
Yeah.
do they think productivity looks like?
Mhm.
We should be asking these questions and leaders should be able to answer it, or you should be able to ideate together and align your ways of working as best as possible. One of the things that when I'm coaching people or talking to people, it's just as simple as, have you ever asked them that?
Yes. And can we, if they don't, here's the thing too. I love it because sometimes when you ask someone, what does productivity look like to you? They don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or what's our real priority? Like if you had to
So it's
pick
just a
one,
trick
if you
question.
had to pick one, what's the top priority?
Yeah.
I've never had someone answer that.
I
They
know.
always still give me 3 to 4 things. And so I also wonder if another question that we could start asking and encouraging people to ask is, what do you think is most valuable?
Yes.
Like, I think, again, it goes back to language sometimes,
Yep.
where if the words that we're using are so weighted in
Yeah.
a meaning that we don't believe in
Tied to
anymore,
performance.
right? If
Yes.
productivity, if priorities, like if those words have too much baggage for somebody to be able
Yes.
to define, what is a new word? What is a
Yeah.
new way? What does impact look like for our team?
Yes.
If
Absolutely.
if we only do one thing really well this year, what do you hope it does for X
Ex
customer?
customer. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I think that those are all great. And so as usual, I
Mhm.
I think that we we are not going to solve everything here, but it would be great, to hear from you
Yeah.
of how do you ruthlessly prioritize? Do you do strategy well? What are your secrets? What are some of the ways that you've reframed things as a leader, as an individual contributor?
Yep.
So as usual,
Find us on LinkedIn.
yes.
We'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, and maybe a hotline one day. I don't know. We'll
The
see.
hotline is really hitting. Like this has been
I'm like
ringing off the hook. So you can't hear it, but it has been ringing
It's
off the
happening.
hook.
It's happening. But we
Um,
look forward to seeing you next time.
thank you.
Thank you.